in Dublin, the organisation is not representing the people that pay their €20 per annum to be a member. And it galls me to hear politicians speaking about visiting prisoners in prison and going to the north to visit prisoners, even going to England to visit prisoners, when you see how the people of Roscahill are being treated in this debacle. There are so many people being harshly treated in this investigation that if they all were guilty, you could fill Portlaoise with them.
I'm here in Galway with former Fianna Fáil councillors Seamus Walsh and Noel Thomas. So you've left Fianna Fáil, you've made a decision to leave the party after 25 years in your case, Seamus Walsh, and 10 years in your case, Noel Thomas.
Well, 10 years as a councillor, but I had 30 years as a Fianna Fáil person. So.
Can you tell me like some of the reasons, the chief reasons behind that decision?
It's just, I suppose, looking from my own perspective, what made me go, I suppose, was, first of all, I think over the last number of years, Fianna Fáil have become completely detached from the ordinary people, their ordinary constituents on the ground here. And I suppose from there, then, we've seen major changes then when it came to, say, the incident in Rosslake Hotel in particular, where both myself and my colleague here, Seamus, were chastised for standing up with our community. And then after that, I suppose, it was the whole process and how Fianna Fáil tried to handle the situation. First of all, they came out and they said that they were taking disciplinary action against us, but yet never, it was only the media we were hearing this from, never actually communicated directly with ourselves. And then eventually, when they did communicate with us to tell us they were taking disciplinary action officially, then when I came back to myself asking them some very basic questions and they could never answer those questions for me, but yet expected me to go to answer questions for them. But as far as I was concerned from the very beginning of that, I mean, if they weren't willing to tell me why I was being investigated, then I was not going to answer any questions for them. And look, it grew from there, and it just became untenable, really, to deal with Fianna Fáil anymore. Just very disappointed in how they handled that situation in particular, but as I said, it's also very disappointing how they seem to have just become so far detached from people as well over the years.
And your plan going forward is to run for independent Ireland, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and what were some of the reasons for your own departure from Fianna Fáil?
Well, firstly, just to give you a background on myself, I became a Fianna Fáil member in 1977, and I was a long-serving secretary of the club, and then in 1998 I became very interested in the council because I had seen the amount of young couples being refused their planning permissions in the area, while in actual fact other people who didn't appear to have a housing need were getting their planning through without too much bother. It created great frustration in the community, great frustration with myself, so I put my name forward as an independent. So in 1999 I was elected as an independent, and I served the first 5 years as an independent councillor. Now, that year in the council, Fianna Fáil were in control. And, I felt that if I had got into Fianna Fáil, that I could make more of an impact, more of a difference. So I actually ran for Údarás na Gaeltachta, which is a development company for the Gaeltacht area, our development institution, government-sponsored institution under the Department of the Gaeltacht. And I got elected to that body and found that the workings of that body were way more pro-people and pro-community than the council was. But from there on, I was a Fianna Fáil member in Galway County Council, having been elected twice as an independent, but having joined Fianna Fáil as a member. Now, I had thought when I joined Fianna Fáil that I would have great access to the different TDs, the fellow councillors would support me, which they did in fairness, and I have to say, the Fianna Fáil councillors in the council in Galway are very supportive, even of our position in the Ross Lake and our position on immigration. And most of the councillors have the exact same views as ourselves, but fear chastising from headquarters, similar to what was threatened upon ourselves. So my main problem with Fianna Fáil was that they didn't act on the planning issues. They didn't act on the roads issues. And one of the major frustrations I had, and I said with the Minister for Local Government, Darragh O'Brien, one of the major problems was that Galway is short something in the region of 14 million per annum on the Equalisation Fund. And we, as Fianna Fáil councillors in Galway County Council, pleaded with Darragh to do something about it. We're told it's a process and this has to be done this way and that has to be done that way. Okay. Then you get back to planning and that's a process. And you have to have this and you have to have that. Last December, process out the window. Roger O'Gorman issues a diktat. He sent in 72 asylum seekers into Ross Lake Hotel. It's on the banks of an SAC river. It doesn't have sewerage. It doesn't have footpaths, it doesn't have lighting, it doesn't have buses, it doesn't have shops, schools or any infrastructure. Galway County Council, in a memo that was provided under Freedom of Information, it came indirectly then to Noel, who gave it to me, and there it was, a memorandum from Galway County Council advising the department and IPAS not to put in the asylum seekers or the IPAS institution in there in the Ross Lake, that it was totally unsuitable. So the very items that we were being chastised for and ridiculed for and ballyragged around the media for were actually Galway County Council policy. So we were actually in total line with the Housing Department, of which I was the chairman of the Housing SPC in Galway County Council for 5 years, and I know the workings of it intimately. So that was very frustrating. And to hear our party leader coming out on the news saying that we were up for a reprimand, which was going to consist of 8 weeks suspension, with us being forced to reapply if we wished to run for Fianna Fáil in this election, I couldn't stomach it. And I couldn't take it. And I couldn't lower myself to think that I would have to beg to come back into a party, if you like, that I didn't agree with the policies on roads, on planning, or on the immigration issue. So I was saying to myself, it's rich of Micheál Martin to say that I'll have to reapply, when in actual fact I'm better off outside. And I made the decision that time, really did, but I kept in contact, if you like, with the party to see what were they coming up with. But they couldn't come up with anything proper. Now, a couple of the local organisers did their absolute best to build and rebuild bridges and do what they could to keep both of us within the party. But headquarters weren't listening to them either, to the extent that one of the organisers decided that he couldn't deal with this anymore, that he wasn't able to deal with the situation, that headquarters weren't even supporting him. So how could we remain in a party that didn't support the policies on which we were elected? And that's the reality of it. Now, in my 1 month to 6 weeks of negotiations with Michael Fitzmaurice and with Noel and the other councillors and TDs that I knew from old, from being 25 years a councillor, I've had more positive feedback from Independent Ireland in 1 month than I've had in 20 years from the Fianna Fáil party. And that is not a mean thing to say, it's totally factual.
And I suppose in terms of, on ground level, would you say that Fianna Fáil is representing the wishes and the views of local people in this area?
I say to you that Fianna Fáil that in Dublin, the organisation is not representing the people that pay their €20 per annum to be a member. And it galls me to hear politicians speaking about visiting prisoners in prison and going to the north to visit prisoners, even going to England to visit prisoners, when you see how the people of Roscahill are being treated in this debacle. Because innocent people there are so many people being harshly treated in this investigation that if they all were guilty, you could fill Portlaoise with them.
So that's the investigation into the proposed asylum centre that...
Into the fire, yeah. into that, yes. Because everybody is being accused of doing it. Now, I would have thought that decent, honest people deserve their dignity. And I would say to you that I am aghast at the notion that innocent people are being accused in the wrong and being pressured to make confessions to a crime, which is a crime, which we all have condemned. But people are being forced to make confessions into a crime that they haven't committed.
And in terms of with your own interactions with the Gardaí in relation to that investigation, what happened to you both? I'll start with you perhaps.
Yeah, well, I suppose, look, first of all, I was brought up to the Garda station in Oughterard in for questioning. I think that was 2 detectives there who had me in a room upstairs, and they questioned me for about an hour and a half. Questions in relation to, what time you were there and who was there beside you, and when you came back again, then who was there, and all this sort of silly questions as far as I'm concerned. But I suppose, look, that's how they do their investigations. But at that particular point, have you seen the videos of the fire? So the videos, actually, I took those videos myself. When I got a call on the night to say that the place was on fire, I was only after leaving a short while before that, so I came back again, and myself and a friend of mine walked up to the hotel, and the place was a long time on fire, obviously, when you're seeing it at that stage. So I took up my phone and I took the videos, so that's where those videos originated from. So the 2 detectives actually asked me could they have a copy of the videos? So I said, no problem. So gave them I actually sent it by WhatsApp over to one of their phones, and that was the interview completed. So then after that, again, sometime later, they decided that they wanted to get the videos downloaded directly from my phone at the station in the barracks inside in Galway City. So I agreed to that. So I was actually in Galway City one evening after a funeral and rang them to see where they were. So they said that they'd ring me back in a few minutes to let me know, and called me back in a few minutes and they said, no, we got called away to something else, we'll have to do it after Christmas. So anyway, I said I was there waiting to go to the barracks, but they cancelled it again. And then after Christmas, on the 6th of January, they decided to do a raid on my house here. So 6 o'clock in the morning, myself and my wife and my family are woken up by doors banging here, doorbells ringing, they're banging on the windows, they're shouting outside, they're shining flashlights in through the window. So we get up and answer the door, and we've got a detective who was down from the crime squad in Dublin, who was the first man in the door. He told me he had a search warrant to search my home, so I asked him to show it to me, so he showed it to me, and everything was legit, so I had to let them proceed with the search. So we were put into the front room here in the sitting room, and a guard put on guard on the door, so we didn't go anyplace. So they continued with their search for, I think, about an hour and a half at the time, and then they eventually took off. No, they brought 2 phones belonging to myself and another phone that I don't know where they got out of, but they found it somewhere in the house. And still to this date, we haven't received any of those phones back again. I've contacted the Gardaí since on several occasions and asked them could I have my property back. And in the beginning, they actually used to reply to the email for me. And the last time I emailed them, I got no reply at all. So then I decided I would put in an official complaint to GSOC in relation to this. So I've done that a few weeks ago and got confirmation that my complaint was received, but nothing ever since that. I think it's something I have to follow up on now fairly soon again. But then after that, I contacted the Gardaí again by email in question, asking again for my phones back, but no answer at all again since. So we're stuck in limbo at the moment, don't know where we are, don't know whether we're being investigated still or not, but I decided then to go to the courts in Galway, and I asked one of the clerks there, could I get a copy of the actual search warrant? And even though I do remember clearly the name of the detective sergeant who actually swore the oath to the judge to secure the warrant, and I also remember the name of the judge that was on that warrant, but I still want to get a copy of it for my own use. And I was told I couldn't get that while the case is still, until the case comes to discovery, in other words, until they complete it. And then I just asked if there was any chance I could get a copy of the oath that detective had swore to the judge in order to get the judge to sign for the warrant. But I've been told on that case as well that I wouldn't be able to get that either. Now, that, as far as I'm concerned, would be a very important piece of information to get, because as far as I'm concerned, like, the Gardaí would want to be making some fairly serious claims on an oath to a judge in order for that judge to sign off for a search warrant for an elected representative's house. I can't imagine that it'd be that easy to get it. So whatever kind of lies the Garda had told them or not, I do not know, but that's all I can assume is it had to be some sort of lies, because I know I'm an innocent man, so that's my view on it.
And Seamus Walsh, what happened with you?
Me personally, I was interviewed in the Garda station. Quite cordial, but robust. I was also interviewed in my house for a 2-hour interview. Very cordial, very mannerly. Not as robust as in the station. But what came from it, the searches 2 days later, on constituents, I'll make it that way, not to identify people for their own reasons to give them their privacy, but houses were, the morning that Noel was raided, and there were 3 other houses raided. And from then I was enraged. I was enraged at the notion that people that had already surrendered their phones were searched at 6 o'clock in the morning, people who had cooperated. And what really hurt me now, and maddened me, annoyed me, was to hear the Minister, Helen McEntee, coming out and saying that public representatives, and I took it as referring to myself, and I would like if Helen McEntee would clarify if it's not myself, but I took it and I was very hurt by her, and genuinely, saying that we wouldn't cooperate with the police. The only item that I wouldn't cooperate with the police is that I refused to sign a statement, because all solicitors that I have ever spoken to have told me not to sign a statement without your solicitor present and without receiving legal advice. I spoke honestly and truthfully to the police. I told them the absolute truth and assured them that there was the truth. I handed them my phone. I told them that there was no item on it that they weren't welcome to look at, and that I hadn't deleted anything from my phones, and that they were welcome to any piece of information I had. But on principle, as it was my constitutional right, I was signing no statement. That was taken as non-cooperation. Now, this started, and it made its way to Helen McEntee. And she has come out and accused us, and me especially, in my view, of not cooperating with the Gardaí, which couldn't be further from the truth. Now, I was annoyed, and very annoyed, at the 6 o'clock raids the morning that Noel's house was raided, and other people that were raided. And I was very annoyed because I know that those people had previously cooperated with the Garda Síochána and were willing to continue that cooperation. I didn't see the need for the dawn raid other than coercion, intimidation, bullying. That's what I saw it as. That was my opinion. I felt it was very heavy-handed, and it galls me to think that we, as members of a Fianna Fáil party at that time, that our leader, Micheál Martin, would kowtow to his partners in government ahead of having a frank discussion with ourselves. Instead of sending a team to us to support us, I would expect that a member of an organisation, probably at one stage the biggest, Fianna Fáil was the biggest party in Ireland, the biggest institution in Ireland, to think that elected councillors of the Fianna Fáil party didn't receive a questionnaire or a handshake or help or anything from our headquarters, other than to threaten us with dismissal, threaten us with not being allowed to run for the party without running the yoke. And I felt that that was extremely disingenuous, and I felt that, and really looking at it, it looks to me like that the Fianna Fáil headquarters in Dublin and our leadership are so intent on staying in power for that last 11 months that they'd gladly send us all down the Swanee. And I felt sold out, and I feel sold out.
Just to clarify for anyone who hasn't followed the story, yourselves and the other people whose homes were raided, they were already cooperating with the Gardaí with the investigation. Is that the case?
Unreservedly.
So it wasn't like it was the first interaction, it just kind of happened out of the blue. I suppose all raids happen out of the blue, but
one gentleman had already handed over his phone voluntarily to the Garda Síochána. He had gone to Galway and bought a £200 Samsung phone for himself to replace his phone that was gone. And he was raided and his phone was taken. The new phone was taken. And he explained his situation about, this is a new phone, you've got my original phone, I've already given it to you. That was of no more. And there was no issue either about people's health concerns, people that would have information on their iPhone that was necessary for their health, etc. They were told just buy another phone. Now, if you're looking at couples rearing a family through the Christmas, and all that goes with it, all the things that people put into making a Christmas, and they put everything. Everybody knows that January is a lean month. But for a couple to have to face out in January and buy 2 new phones, one in particular for health reasons, and that's just one house. You go to the next house, the children's phones were taken. So they were, and from that point of view, you have social justice involved. You have, on the Department of Social Welfare are coming out talking about giving a bonus week payment to social welfare recipients, while they can charge a young couple, in effect, £4,000 or £5,000 worth of electronic gear in a fell swoop. I don't think it holds up, and I don't think it's right.
Just to recap a little bit, what was it in particular that you had done or said in relation to the incident down there that had, I suppose, brought you to the attention of the Gardaí in the first place?
I can say nothing in particular that we said or done brought us to the attention of the Gardaí. But I can tell you what has really brought us to the attention of the Gardaí is by us standing up and standing by our community and actually coming out and telling the truth in relation to what's going on in this country, in relation to the whole immigration issue. That has brought what I would only describe as a desperate government at the moment. It has enraged them completely. They're becoming exposed for what they are doing and their lack of ability to actually put in a proper policy in place in relation to migration. So I think nobody can tell me that what has happened to us over the last few months has not been politically motivated. Like what you said, you've got a government that's desperate. They're putting the pressure, obviously, onto the Gardaí to get out there and to try and nail somebody for one of the arsons going around the country or whatever, like. And that's what it can be nothing else other than that, like. So it's completely politically motivated, the whole lot of this. And when you ask what we said, okay, we've been quoted by different local representatives here and by different NGOs here. And I'll give you some of the quotes that have been used against us. Was that we rushed to the scene over at the Ross Lake Hotel and that we instilled fear into the crowd and that we put racist comments up online. Now, none of those things are true. We never actually instilled fear in anybody. We never put a racist comment up online. Now, I have gone back myself since. I've asked every one of those NGOs to clearly show us where those racist remarks were and what they were. I've asked them to explain to us how we have instilled fear into the crowd. And to date, they cannot come back with any answer to me. So there was absolutely nothing that we had said in relation to this whole incident. There was other than I said to you, the political motivation here by a desperate government to try and just nail somebody for what has happened. For their own shortcomings, really, is what you can say. Yeah.
And I suppose if a representative of the government was here, I know outgoing Taoiseach Leo Varadkar, for example, has recently said that the reason, the increasing numbers of asylum seekers and refugees in particular are coming to Ireland is because of, he called it, push factors. So he was saying things like climate change, conflict, injustice. He was naming out a list of things that he said were push factors pushing people towards Ireland. What do you say to that?
I say it's absolute and utter rubbish. I mean, Leo Varadkar came out with a statement there going back a few weeks ago, and I thought it's kind of one of the greatest statements I think I've ever heard in a long time. He came back and he said that in 10 years' time, he said, we as Irish people are going to look back and be proud of all the people we brought into this country. Now, never did I ever hear such an untrue statement in my life. I mean, we're not the first people for this to happen to. I mean, one of the best examples you can get out there is Sweden. I think it was 2015, and that's exactly 10 years ago, you could say now at this stage almost. 2015, that's when Sweden opened their borders. They took in a whole heap of refugees. And I can tell you one thing for sure, they are looking back now, and they are not proud of what they have done. Definitely not proud of it. So that's absolute rubbish. Look, I'd done an interview myself only last week with Brian Dobson on Radio 1, and we were talking about, in general, the reasons why I'd left Fianna Fáil or whatever else, and then Brian decided to sort of attack me in relation to the whole migrant thing, and he was claiming that that we have to take these people into the country. I was saying that we don't. I said, as far as I'm concerned, that the vast majority of Ukrainians that were taken into this country were economic migrants, and I stand by that statement all the time. And I said, I sort of had an insight on that because I'm chairperson of the LCDC in Galway County as well for the last few years. So I've been seeing exactly from the beginning what's happening here. And it became very obvious 2 days after I'd done the interview, the government released figures to show that from once they dropped the welfare payments, we've a 66% decrease in Ukrainians coming into the country since. So that's not a coincidence. They were here because they were economic migrants. Of course, there were some genuine people coming in here. And I would be the first person always to put out my hand and help anybody who needs our help. But what we've done with our irresponsible policies that we had in this country for the last couple of years, we flooded all the accommodation we had, and the majority of it with people who were not deserving of it. And now we're left in a situation, as I said, we cannot help the genuine people who need our help in this country at all.
I suppose if I can ask you, Seamus Walsh, is there not an element of, let's say, regeneration to bringing more people into smaller communities like you have down here in Galway? Is there an element that it helps the community, or what do you think about that?
Well, from a government that has failed to deliver a road structure, infrastructure, a bypass for our town, who has failed under the equalisation strategy on the council funding, that has failed to deliver us 14 million per annum, that has left us starving, that has tried to force Galway County Council and Galway City Council to merge together because they saw it as being more efficient. If you look at a government that has taken some of the finest officials we've had in Galway County Council and offered them retirement packages as if it were a good thing, We have lost the brains of our council over the last 20 years, especially the last 15 years, on these restructuring packages. There were great programmes in place, there were great plans in place, there were great people managing our council, and there are now again, we only recently had our full-time manager reappointed, a full-time manager as opposed to a temporary manager. These type of things the government has failed on. When you talk about regeneration, it has nothing to do with migration. There's such a thing as integration. And to integrate people that are legally in the country with correct border control, with correct vetting, with correct assimilation into the community. So you would have integration. But in our area, what we have is saturation. Our nursing home is gone to the immigration crisis with Ukraine. Our local hosteleries, hotels, and one major hotel, Peacocks in Mount Cross, is gone. We rely in this hinterland in Uachtarard, Mycullen, Killannon, we rely on tourism, Lough Corrib, for our main industry. You're out on the periphery of Europe, the periphery of Ireland, you're in the west, Clore areas, depopulation. You will not solve our problems by giving us 72 males in a hotel 2 miles up into the hill that doesn't have running water practically, that doesn't have a sewerage system at all, that's on the banks of a specially conserved area of a river for Lough Corrib, which is one of the most pristine waters in Ireland, in Europe. So to tell us that to saturate our towns and our hotels with asylum seekers, with IPAS provision people, that's a good thing. I cannot say that it is a good thing. We are hearing percentages, that you hear such and such a percent, but if you look at the percentages that I have looked at over the Christmas with regard and down through January with regard to this, we seem to be running on twice what any other place has got. And I just think that we have enough. Now, when we speak about the reasons that Fianna Fáil, that we have fallen out of favour with Fianna Fáil, one of the main quotes, and I think it'll be a quote for all time, is that the inn is full. I attribute that to Councillor Thomas. And mine was that it was a failed government policy. But the government has come along in the last month and said their policies have failed. And they've retracted the payments made to Ukrainians, etc., which most of the people that I represent have absolutely no problem with being good to people. But they're asking the question, why haven't we got more respite for the families that have needy children? Why aren't we able to provide housing for our own people within the country, even before this crisis came up? But yet, overnight, I remember one of the most, and this is genuine, one of the most harrowing canvases that I ever made. I spoke to a lady on the periphery of Connemara. She was in tears. She walked outside the house with me and she stood on the footpath outside her house on a Saturday night, and she told me that the only day in the week that she could get away, that she had somebody to mind the children, the only day in the week that she had a possibility of getting into Galway city ever was a Saturday. And there was no bus from that area on a Saturday. None. No bus whatsoever on a Saturday from that area. I'm talking now roughly about 10 years ago. Yet, when the Ukrainian crisis came, overnight, there are now 14 bus routes from Connemara into the city. So, the government, you'd often hear, where there's a will, there's a way. The main frustration and the main anger that's in the community is that the government didn't have the will and they didn't look for the way. But overnight, they are bending backwards and bending over backwards. And the cynicism is that we have a Fianna Fáil government, if you like, and a Fine Gael government that are being wagged by the Green Party, and that they can now find whatever is needed to appease the Green Party. But for the past 25 years that I've been in politics, all I've had was excuses and been told why I couldn't have something. And it goes back to the great John F. Kennedy quotation about ask not why you cannot do it or whatever, and ask what you can do for your country, ask what you can do for your country, not what your country can do for you. But in this particular position, we have a government that overnight has found that Midas touch and can provide everything. that they could never have provided before. And that is frustrating to people. I'll go as far as saying that Noel Thomas and myself have started a movement, an awakening, and people's eyes are opened, because it seemed to have this PC thing that how dare you say something that was true for fear you'd offend somebody. But I think that when Micheál Martin castigated us on TV, it actually threw the shackles off us. And it gave us practically the strength and the right to come out and say, and the more we said it, the more people admired us. And I'm waiting for the next election just to see how the people are going to reject the main parties. And I am confident that there is a movement out there to teach the big parties a lesson. And it's a lesson they need to learn.
And what was the reaction among Fianna Fáil when you announced your departure, both of you?
Well, I have to say it was minimal. There was no real response, to be honest. I know there's a couple of my colleagues, the councillors inside in the Galway County Council, who wished me well, but other than that, nothing. I said the HQ never came back with any correspondence to me since. We officially said we were leaving. So it's like as if we didn't exist there at all.
Do you think your constituents were shocked, disappointed, or did they kind of support your decision?
I have to say, from the very first time, I think it was just the day after the fire in Rosslake Hotel that time. And I'd done an interview with RTE at the time and with Virgin Media. And since that day, my phone started ringing. And I have had nothing but support ever since. And it's continued that way. Even last week again, I'm still getting calls every day from all over the country. It's not just from around here. I said it's all over the country. People are fed up with what's going on in this country. And Seamus highlighted it there, and it's one of the most prominent things that you're hearing on the ground all the time, is that just people are looking at now how we've got any amount of money that we want to solve all these problems. Whereas like just 2 years ago, we could get nothing done. I know people myself who would come to me, they'd got children, say with spina bifida or whatever, they're waiting for an operation, the money wasn't there for them. You've got families all over the country, who have maybe disabled children or adults even in their house who need help. The help was never there for them. The funding was never there for them. And really and truly, if they actually sat down and took a right look at this, they'd actually see that, it was saving the state an absolute fortune if they had just helped the people who are helping in their own homes, rather than putting them into institutions or into hospitals or whatever. We're actually saving a lot of money for it. But the answer always and ever, whenever we had to go and try and help somebody in a situation like that, was that there's no funding there for them. And people are absolutely enraged now when they can see the kind of money that our government are spending, just willy-nilly, no problem at all. It's like as if there's an endless pot there now, and for nothing they want, but nothing for the people of Ireland themselves.
And I suppose as two individuals who have like an extensive experience in politics, do you have any notion as to why the government has, as you said, kind of endless money for this cause when they haven't had it for the Irish people?
Because they have lost touch completely. They're actually not aware of what's going on anymore. What they're doing is they're listening to minorities out there. And the minorities are dictating. And again, Councillor Walsh actually said it here a minute ago. One of the worst minorities, I think, that this government is listening to is the actual Green Party. The Green Party are controlling this government because the government know themselves what's coming in the next election. So they're going to hold for no matter what cost it is. And that's what they're doing. Because as soon as Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael tell the Green Party lads, you're not getting what you want here, we're not going to increase in the carbon tax fee again or whatever, they'll pull plug, and then that's Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael gone. And they know that. They're going to hold for as long as they can for that reason. But again, it's NGOs like, any number of them out there, like the anti-racist crowd or whatever you want to call them. They're all the ones that seem to have, the smallest groups, but the loudest voices. They're the ones that are being heard.
And going forward with Independent Ireland, what do you hope to be able to achieve?
Well, from my meetings with Michael Fitzmaurice and the team with Independent Ireland, I feel that I'm being listened to. The policies put forward by Independent Ireland definitely strike a harmonious spell with myself. I actually feel more comfortable in the past 3 to 4 weeks since I've made the final decision. I feel more comfortable that if we make a good show in this election, in the council election, and build on that, please God, in the general election, that we'll be in a position where we'll have a say which will influence government policy. Because in my 25 years as a councillor, I have seen millions upon millions upon millions wasted on reports and studies and policies and think tanks, but none of it coming to anything. It's out there in the public domain that the outer bypass for Galway has already had 40 million spent on design, or failed design. Now 40 million would build some road. So the policies are wrong. If it's deemed by the people of this land that a particular piece of infrastructure is required, it should be fast-tracked. And there is nobody in the 32 counties, and even I'll go as far as say in the British Isles, that has visited this country and has come to the West, that hasn't been caught up in the logjam in Galway City and the Quincentennial Bridge and trying to get across that. People know here don't go to Galway on a Friday, because from 11 o'clock on a Friday it's chock-a-block and there'll be a mile of a queue on the Quincentennial Bridge. We all know it. Now we have Eamon Ryan in charge of transport. He's not the friend of Galway West. He's not the friend of Seamus Welsh, and he's not the friend of the people that I represent, because he's holding back invaluable infrastructure that we need. The waste of money. Now, you asked a question there a second ago about where do we think the money is coming from or what's happening. There appears to be an agenda across Europe, and I don't know where it's coming from because they're destroying themselves. We are in a part of Ireland, and I'll give you this example. The town of Spittle, which is right just over the mountain there. What would it be as the crow flies? 7 miles away, 6 miles away, as the crow flies. If you wish to buy a house from a building contractor tomorrow morning, a new house in Spittle, you're not, well, I won't talk about your competency in the Irish language, but unless you're a fluent Irish speaker, you're not allowed to build there. Now, this is one of the things that the Garda Síochána, when they questioned me about my opinions and the policies regarding what led up to the Ross Lake Hotel fire. And I said, do you realise, I said, that Lough Corrib is an SAC. What's an SAC? It's a special area conservation. It's protected. The river in Uachtarard is protected for the pearl mussel, and rightly so, protected because it's a very valuable animal or mollusk. But you can say that in an area where we, the local people, are restricted and not allowed to live, and there are areas where we are not allowed to build a sewage system, we're not allowed to build a house, we're not allowed to make a road, we're not allowed to do anything that would interfere in any way with the existing environment. And to think that Roderick O'Gorman can, by decree, the very man that's stopping us building our houses, the very party that don't want us to interfere with the environment, that man is the very man that can put 72 people into a building that's totally unfit on the banks of an SAC with no sewerage, footpaths, roads or infrastructure. There's a total contradiction. And it doesn't, and the people aren't stupid, but I think they were subdued. But I actually believe that they will not be subdued any longer. And I think they're chomping at the bit. I definitely in this area, I think people are chomping at the bit to get to that ballot box.
I suppose if Minister Roderick O'Gorman was here, he might say that Ireland has legal and moral obligations to take in the numbers that we are seeing taken in. And, you know, further to the decision on the government's white paper, I think he's planning to bring in 13,000 to 16,000 per annum from now on. What would you say to that?
Well, as a local representative in this area, I have a moral duty, and I have a moral compass. And my moral duty is to the local people here who have never had anything. We are out on the west of Ireland, we're out in Connemara, we're out in the Clore area, disadvantaged area. We have nothing. Green policies have made us have less. The main industry in Connemara are the Gaeltacht colleges for the summer. And these Gaeltacht colleges attract people from all over Ireland especially, both students, adult and junior students, who come to the Gaeltacht to learn their Irish. In order to keep those students for the summer, a person must have a certain standard of house. The Green Party want to deny us our one-off houses. They want to deny us our housing. They want to deny us our way of living. They're either ignorant or stupid or both, because we cannot live in this area without some basic economic infrastructure. And anything I can see coming from the Green Party is trying to take that away. My experience with media has been very positive. My experience with other politicians on the media expressing views which I felt were very bigoted, misinformed, ill-informed, I felt that they just ran with what they thought was popular, but they've made a very, very big mistake. Because although people were silent, I actually think politicians, they've actually pinned their colours to the wrong mast. And they're beginning to realise it. I even see Sinn Féin rowing back. I see Fianna Fáil rowing back. I see Fine Gael. There's an exodus out of Fine Gael because somebody somewhere has told them they've got it wrong. And I think they're leaving the sinking ship before the electorate sink the ship fully for them.
Do you think it's too late for them?
I actually, from my personal grudge point of view, I hope it's too late for them, because what we have suffered over the past 4 months, the indignity, the unfairness, the lack of support from the Fianna Fáil party, in Dublin I might add, our councillor colleagues, I think 99% it would be fair to say that they have been brilliant, supportive and decent. But they're still controlled from Dublin. And the policies from Dublin will be to the forefront. What I see with Independent Ireland and Michael Fitzmaurice, who was a colleague of ours in Galway County Council, who was a fellow agricultural man like ourselves. We're from farm and stock. I'm a farmer myself. Maybe not a very good farmer myself, but I'm one. And we understand the area, we understand the people. I suppose it's a major disappointment for me to walk away from the 14, well, Noel is walking with me, so the other 13 colleagues in Galway County Council. There is a sense of sadness to me because we have been in rooms together for the past 20 years with me being in the party. We've been in that room together trying to outwit the others, trying to come up with policies that we were good for our area, trying to get something included in the county development plan and, getting support from across, which we have done. There's very, very decent councillors in Galway County Council who will vote for the policy and not the person. And those councillors are to be commended. And I sincerely hope that those type of councillors and ourselves will be returned next June, because Ireland needs a shake-up. But I wouldn't like to see the baby thrown out with the bathwater, because there are good people out there. But the local people, I don't think they're stupid. And I think they've had enough.
But there's only one thing on that, Fatima, that's important though, is that it's okay, like we all know that there's an awful lot of people like ourselves out there and that agree with what we're doing. But they have to stand up as well. Because there's no point hiding in the shadows. You actually have to get the courage to stand out and say that it's wrong. And then that's the only way you're going to make real changes there. Like, you can't stay forever being afraid that you're going to be labelled as being racist or far right or whatever, and you have to stand up and be counted. And I hope to God that by us coming forward, as we have been over the last while, that we can give the courage to more people or more politicians to actually stand up and be counted as well.